Strikers and Terminators, this is internet personality Vangelus, and this review sample of the just barely last Mastermind Creations release of 2016 is Titanika, the next fembot in their Reformatted series, whose box has no magnet flap window cover. Truth be told, I don't know if I mind this. If it's creating savings for the customer, I'm all for it. If it isn't, then it's a shame to see the fifth panel quietly disappear. Titanika's vehicle mode ain't a shame, though. Out of the box, you'll need to attach her weapons, two of which form a front bumper. The other two are just straight up guns on a car, which plug into a hole, tab into a slot, and grip onto a cylinder. Once it's all put together, you've got a six-wheeled armored truck that certainly looks like a Striker, albeit not any specific one. I love the wide flatness and the golden highlighted on-topic color palette that gives this thing an air of regality despite the brutish silhouette. The metallic shine here against the otherwise dull base coat. Also, the six wheels have got actual rubberized tire sleeves, giving them sextuple buttloads of rolling traction. As for size, Titanika's got hell of width and volume. I mean, her name is Titanika. Here she is next to Rook, another six-wheeler that most Transformers fans should have had in their lives at some point. Am I dropping personal judgments? Maybe. Should you have Rook in your life? Not maybe. Absolutely. Titanika's got a real straightforward transformation. Just remember to follow the instructions and rotate those kneecaps out of the way as soon as you begin. I very much enjoy how she gets bipedal, and I think it's because of how much it reminds me of the Spartan Commodus conversion, which remains one of my favorite Mastermind Creations designs to date. Her legs pull a very similar trick, folding the outer hunks of vehicle in on themselves to become glorious chunks of wheel. What I like about these kinds of transformations is the fact that they're mostly made out of cool moments with very little fiddly filler activity in between. It also makes for a simpler and quicker process, which may or may not align with your tastes, depending how hardcore you are about puzzle play. But it's so damn satisfying, I only see its speed as a plus. Also, do you see what the hands did? What delightful spherical geometry! Anyway, everything tabs into place super dead solid, with the satisfying Reformatted series construction I've come to expect. This is a unique take on Striker, drawing closest to the animated version in that she's mostly a very thick and tall bipedal robot. Titanika's got oomph to her silhouette, and cuts an imposing picture from almost any angle. As I said before, her colors make me think of the intended homage, though Mastermind Creations reinterpreted the yellow into a slightly dull gold. I don't really mind, makes her feel like a proper general. The studded crotch strip is kinda weird. The head sculpt is a huge nod to animated Striker over most anything else, and it's really well done. Loads of personality, and a great application of paint to bring the visage to life. Titanika looks wonderfully grumpy and mean. Titanika's hands can de-transform to provide her with studded mace melee power, though I'm not sure if that's more or less threatening than having most of a studded mace as a knuckle plate. You can also rotate the weapony tubey things on your hips, if that gets you excited. As for handheld weapons, Titanika's got those two big rifle things. You can attach her bumper parts to them as well, like underslung grenade launchers. Despite the odd curvatures of her hands, the handles seat within her mighty grasp with no trouble. Also, you've got options. The bumper parts can sit up in their vehicle mode peg holes, now functioning as big shoulder launchers. Adding more towards a classic Striker silhouette, the rifles are able to plug onto some square pegs on her back parts, though they tend to point at angles rather than straight up and perpendicular to the floor. Also, yes, leaving the bumper parts on her shoulders does make for some crowding and collision as far as articulation's concerned. Titanika is a toy that's trying like hell to help you out. That's what I'm going to say up front. Her head's on a ball socket joint with lots of movement, tilt, and etc. The transformation hinge can allow for a little bit more leaning forwards and backwards. Her shoulders, and this is what I was talking about like 5 seconds ago. These shoulder pads, they can move independently. And by the way, I like the look with the cannons up here, but for the sake of posability demonstration, it's a lot easier if you get them out of the way. Because, like, these shoulder pads can move up here, which aesthetically looks cool, right? But then, like, they are literally right up against the backpack. So the way her shoulders work, it's a gigantic ball socket joint set inside her torso, and then a hinge joint out here as well. There's a decent range on the ball socket joint, and this is all to allow you to pivot the shoulder to basically get out of the way of things, because it can even butterfly forwards a little bit, like this, and that lets you move her arm forwards, like that. And not bump into the backpack. And you just gotta take some time to figure out how she poses. And I found that I can still get her into a lot of decent postures. Like, I can get the arm almost all the way out, and then, yeah, you can cheat a bit and do this. and then, yo, it's all the way out. There's a bicep swivel, by the way. There's also a double-jointed elbow. If you get the shoulder pad out of the way of this thing, it can do quite a curl. And you can find a medium point afterwards if you don't want the shoulder pad all the way over like that. The wrists can swivel left and right. The finger posability, it is a ball socket thumb, and then 4 individually jointed curled fingers jointed at the knuckle. The reason I'm more okay with this than on, like, some Masterpiece alikes is because, A, like, you know, this looks like a cool hand sculpt, and B, the curvature on these is in service of the really cool, you know, transformation into a ball gimmick trick that she does. And so, you know, I'm alright with them not also trying to load out each of these fingers with extra knuckles. I think that could have been very messy, with them all having to slide inside of a sphere. So, arm posability is where she suffers the most, but where, like, you know, with all these tricks, I've still been able to get her to do stuff. Like, I got the gun here, because I was able to get her, this took some doing, so let's go on this adventure together. I was able to get her to hold her rifle in, you know, that rifle posture that is the hallmark of a toy made in the last couple years that isn't a G.I. Joe. Like a robot toy that can actually hold their gun like this is something that I find impressive. And for all of her limited shoulder posability, she is able to do this. Like, this looks pretty ding-dang cool. So, you know, props to Titanika for doing what she can. If you get this toy, just have some patience, and this'll work out. Now that I've done waffling about that, her waist joint is pretty limited, because it's not including the butt flap. So if you get everything out of the way, her waist can swivel about that far. Just enough for some emotion, not enough for any wild emotion. Given her size and shape, I'm kind of okay with that. I wish that it could go, you know, like maybe 45 degrees, and it can make it to about, like, I don't know, 35, 40. That extra 5, man, those are the golden degrees. Her hips have a very buttery ratchet going forwards and backwards, and she can almost kick all the way forwards until you have to start playing around with stuff. You can kind of get it to be about 85 degrees. There is a thigh swivel here, just a big cut one. She's got outwards hip motion that, you know, it's gonna go that far. She ain't doing the splits, unfortunately. I don't feel super mad about that. There's a double-jointed knee that is pretty darn gorge, because, you know, in either type of swing, or, you know, use both joints kind of swing, you can get that full curl. And she's got an ankle tilt, and she has a bit of a forward and backward front of the foot joint, but the heel is a separate piece. They both use the same base to swivel, so you can get a full foot ankle tilt, which is really cool. And then the neatest part of this is like almost a hidden joint. There is a toe joint on this figure, and it kind of works. I tried a few postures that make use of the toe joint. You have to play with the swivels a little bit, but, like, look at that. Like, she's on just the toe there, you know? Heel is up. So that's cool. Titanika starts off being a little bit disappointing to pose, and then becomes more impressive to pose the more that you see her work her way out of her limitations. So, I kind of like how this turned out. I wish that the easier solution was there, though, where, I mean, you could detach the whole backpack, but if these two tires, these two wheel blocks, could have just folded up a little bit more to be out of the way, to be, you know, with this space being clear, it would have made it effortless to pose Titanika. I would put Titanika on quite a pedestal in my personal rankings of the Reformatted line, almost up there with Spartan and Commodus. It's her own design that holds her back, as the shoulders and backpack are constantly millimeters away from another collision when posing the figure. Though I've got to give credit where it's due. I can always eventually get her into the stance I want. It just requires some heavy awareness of what can move, where, and how. She still ends up on a pedestal because I am way into her vehicle mode, her robot mode, and her transformation, especially given the fact that she's going to share tooling with Dicamus the Roadbuster. Titanika very much has her own identity that doesn't immediately make me say, "Oh yes, I see the Dicamus in this piece." Like, I don't look at this toy and just see the retool. I see Titanika first. Her departures from an average Striker feel entirely in character, and her direct homages feel spot on. Titanika's got badass mass, a hint of brutish class, which I found to be a blast. Anyway, this has been Internet Personality Vangelus, and due to shifting production schedules and delays, another fairly purple-heavy vehicle came out in the Reformatted line shortly after Titanika. Have you lived under enough of a rock to not know who it is? Are you a bad enough hermit to save the president?